How is it that NSO still doesn't have the original Pokemon games for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance? I feel like I've been asking this question ever since they announced that Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games were coming to the platform, and that was like a year and a half ago, especially when they announced that Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 were coming to NSO. Clearly the next step would be to bring over the original games as well, because that's how that game worked. Originally, they worked hand in hand. You would get your Pokemon from your Game Boy games, you would transfer them into Pokemon Stadium, and you would battle with them. But now, it's been almost a full year as of this recording that Pokemon Stadium has been put onto NSO, and there's still no word as to why we are not getting the Game Boy games. And at this point, I'm pretty confident that we're just not going to get them. So the question is why? Why are we not getting them on NSO? It seems like it's a very clear and easy solution that Nintendo and Pokemon Company are just choosing not to do. The only thing I can think of is that Pokemon Company knows that these games will sell like crazy. There's a large demand in playing the original games, whether it be red and blue and yellow or gold, silver, and crystal. Those two generations of Pokemon were, arguably the peak of the franchise, or at least one of the biggest peaks. A lot of people grew up on those games, so naturally a lot of people want to go back to them and play them, because right now there's no legal way to do it. And definitely no easy way to do it either, unless you happen to have the original copies and Game Boys that still work. It's really hard to come by, and I suppose if you managed to buy the games on the 3DS when those were still up on the eShop, you could play them that way. I think they are aware of this, and they would be pretty stupid to put those games onto a subscription service such as NSO. Instead, they were probably trying to figure out a way where they can squeeze those games dry and make as much money out of them as possible. So whether that be re-releasing them in some sort of new digital game, maybe charging $15 for it, I feel like a lot of people would probably pull the trigger on that and buy it for that price. That's the only thing I can think of, and I mean, that's fine if that's the case, but they're not even releasing it. They're just sitting on it, or maybe they feel like they don't even want to release it at all. Maybe they're thinking, just moving forward, they want to release newer games, and the remakes that they release are for newer generations. They don't really want to go back to it. And I guess if you think about it, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee exists, so that kind of covers the first generation of Pokemon, but it's just very baffling, and it is a very big disappointment that Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 exist on NSO, and there's just no way to transfer your Pokemon into those games and battle them the way the game really was intended to do. The whole marketing pitch of Pokemon Stadium was for you to pull in your Pokemon from your original games and battle them in 3D. And not being able to do that is kind of upsetting, because the only option you have is to play with the rental Pokemon, and there's a lot to be desired there. Let's just leave it at that. And besides the original Pokemon games, the other question I'm wondering is why have they not brought back some of the spin-offs? The only spin-off Pokemon game that they have on NSO so far, at least in terms of the handhelds, is the Pokemon TCG game. What about the Pokemon pinball games? I absolutely loved them. The one on Game Boy Color was great, and when they remade it for Game Boy Advance with Gen 3 Pokemon, that one was really fun too. And I swear, I thought that the Game Boy Color game was already announced to be coming out for the platform. Turns out, it wasn't. I don't know if I dreamt it or what, but I went back and checked the trailers, and it's nowhere to be seen. So that's a little baffling to me. I could have sworn that they announced it, but whatever. Maybe I imagined it. That's just my desire to have that game come out is actually altering my own reality, which is a little weird. But it would be great if they could at least bring back the spin-offs. If they're really against bringing back the original games, okay, fine, but the spin-offs, at least bring them, have them populate the platform so we can at least, be exposed to the different spin-off Pokemon games. A lot of them were really good, especially back in the day. I really am just hoping that they pull these old Pokemon games and bring them to modern day consoles somehow, just because there's a whole new generation of Pokemon players that are probably not going to get the opportunity to see where this series really started from. And I'm aware that Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu exist, and that's supposed to be kind of the replacement for the original games, but I feel like you'd want to preserve the original games in some way and at least make it accessible to anyone who's interested in it, because otherwise it's going to get forgotten. And even the developers of Pokemon, if they're kind of not constantly reminded of the roots of this franchise, some things might start to get lost. And I think a lot of that is actually happening as we speak for current mainline Pokemon games. It's definitely lacking in a lot of different aspects, and I feel like they need to kind of go back to their roots and figure out what worked and build off of that. I actually spoke a little bit about this in my previous video, talking about what I think the Gen 5 remake should be like, and I mentioned that Pokemon companies should probably go back to their roots to figure out how not to mess it up. So if you're interested in watching that, you can click the card right at the top right. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. Are you upset that they haven't brought back the original Pokemon games onto NSO? Are you hoping that they do eventually, or are you kind of in the same boat as me and accepted the fact that it's probably never going to come out in that shape or form, and that if it does come out, it's probably going to be in a more packaged product, not part of the subscription service that NSO provides? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thanks again so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.